You ever notice how in every American suburb there's always that one family everyone thinks has it all together? The clean-cut lawn, the smiling Christmas card, the wife with her yoga mat pretending she's spiritually enlightened because she bought sage at Whole Foods, and the husband, me, mowing the lawn on Saturdays pretending everything is fine while secretly questioning his entire existence. Yeah, that was us. Picture perfect until you zoomed in close enough to see the cracks, the late-night deadlines, the unexplained perfume lingering like a crime scene clue, and the smug way she would say, "Don't wait up for me, honey," as if I were her personal doorman instead of her husband. The betrayal didn't start big, it started subtle. She'd roll in at midnight, her hair a little too perfect for someone who had just finished spreadsheets. And call me crazy, but I've never seen an Excel formula make a woman giggle like that. At first, I wanted to believe her, because that's what family men in America do. We trust, we provide, we convince ourselves our wives are loyal, while Netflix asks if we're still watching. But trust, as it turns out, is just the setup for infidelity to punch you in the gut later. Now, here's where the parody starts, because looking back, the signs were so obvious it felt like I was starring in one of those cheesy late-night infomercials. Has your wife been working late? Is she suddenly more interested in cardio? Do you smell cologne that isn't yours? Congratulations, sir, your subscription to Toxic Love has been renewed automatically. And the worst part? I kept paying that subscription with my sanity. See, my wife didn't just work late. She had become the Michael Jordan of excuses. Monday it was quarterly reports, Tuesday it was a networking dinner. Wednesday she had to help her boss prepare a presentation, and by Thursday I was half expecting her to claim she was recruited by the CIA. Because let's be honest, if you're sneaking around that much, at least give me a good conspiracy to believe in. Make it fun for me. Tell me you're saving the world instead of destroying our marriage. But I'll admit, I played dumb longer than I should have. I convinced myself it was all in my head. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was just insecure. Maybe I should stop watching so many true crime documentaries where the cheating spouse always ends up exposed in the most dramatic way possible. I even tried to rationalize her sudden obsession with looking good for work. She's just ambitious, I told myself. She wants a promotion. That's what strong American women do. Except the promotion she was after wasn't in her career. It was in her manager's bed. And here's where the betrayal hit me. Family. The one thing I thought was sacred, the one thing I thought couldn't be touched, was nothing more than a prop in her little office soap opera. Imagine me sitting in the kitchen at 11:45 p.m. eating cold pizza, scrolling through old Facebook photos of us smiling at Disney World, while she's out there creating a whole new storyline called Infidelity, the sequel. That's the kind of dark comedy you don't even have to write. It writes itself. And the more I thought about it, the more I started seeing patterns, like I was in some paranoid conspiracy forum. Every late-night text from her boss was classified communication. Every new piece of lingerie I found in her drawer was evidence of collusion. If I had mapped it all out on a corkboard with red string, I would have looked like a detective unraveling the Watergate scandal. But instead of Nixon, it was my wife sneaking around with her manager at the Marriott off I-75. Now you'd think this kind of discovery would break me, that I'd collapse into self-pity, cry into my Budweiser, and call my buddy to ask how divorce lawyers work. But nah, this is America. We don't go down easy. I felt the betrayal, sure, but under that betrayal brewed something far more delicious: revenge. Not the sloppy, dramatic kind you see in Lifetime movies. I'm talking precise, calculated, career-ending revenge. Because if she wanted to mix business with cheating, then I was going to make sure business and infidelity destroyed each other in a spectacular fireworks show. I wasn't just the betrayed husband. I was about to become the director, the writer, and the producer of her downfall. And let me tell you, no Netflix series could compete with what I was planning. So there I was, pretending everything was normal, smiling at neighborhood barbecues, waving at the mailman, nodding along when she said she was working late again. But inside, I was sharpening my knives, not literal knives, don't get me wrong, I'm not that guy, but the kind of knives that cut careers in half, the kind that slice through reputations with a single email. And the irony? She had no idea the man she thought was blind, the man she thought she could betray without consequence, was already writing the script to end her toxic love story once and for all. Here's the thing about lies. They age like milk. At first, they seem fresh, smooth, maybe even believable. But give them a little time, and suddenly the whole kitchen stinks. My wife's work-late excuse was that sour carton in the back of the fridge, and I was the idiot opening it over and over, sniffing, gagging, and still putting it back. But one night, the smell got too strong to ignore. She told me she was meeting with her boss to finalize a client presentation. But I swear, even the dog looked at me like, "Come on, man, you buying this?" And if your golden retriever starts side-eyeing your marriage, you know something's rotten. Now, in America, we're raised on detective shows. Law and Order, CSI, Dateline. You can't flip through basic cable without stumbling on a plot where someone cheats, lies, and ends up exposed in high definition. So naturally, I channeled my inner detective. I didn't wear a trench coat, but I did something better. I casually checked her work calendar when she left her laptop open. Pro tip, if you're going to cheat, don't sync your meetings with Google Calendar like you're scheduling infidelity between lunch breaks. I saw the entry, client dinner, 7 p.m., which sounded normal until I realized the client was mysteriously unnamed. And for someone who couldn't remember our anniversary without 3 Facebook reminders, she suddenly had a flawless memory for every one of these client dinners. Yeah, okay, that was the first crack. The second was the phone call. I overheard her in the kitchen, whispering like a high schooler sneaking out past curfew. "Don't worry, he won't find out," she said. My heart dropped. For a moment I thought maybe she was planning me a surprise party. But no, surprise parties don't usually involve giggling and a tone that says, "I'm wearing that red dress you like." It was the kind of betrayal that hits you in slow motion, like dropping your iPhone in the toilet. You see it happening, you know it's too late, but you still reach anyway. So I did what every betrayed American husband in a toxic love story eventually does. I followed her. Call it stalking, call it spying, I call it patriotism. Because if family is sacred, then cheating is treason, and I was about to catch a traitor red-handed. She left the house at 6:45, heels clicking, perfume cloud trailing behind her like a signal flare for infidelity. I tailed her, heart racing, palms sweating on the steering wheel, narrating my own life like I was in some budget noir film. She thought she was clever. She thought he'd never know. But tonight, Justice rides a Honda Civic. She pulled into a bar, not even a classy rooftop, just a mid-tier sports bar with neon beer signs and sticky floors. That was the first insult. If you're going to betray me, at least do it somewhere with white tablecloths. But no, apparently my marriage was worth 2-for-1 margaritas and karaoke night. I parked a few spaces back, slipped inside, and there it was, the moment every betrayed spouse dreads and fantasizes about at the same time. She was sitting across from her manager, not a laptop in sight, no documents, just 2 cocktails, and her hand resting on his like it was the most natural thing in the world. My chest tightened. It wasn't just cheating, it was betrayal, a violation of family, a slap in the face to every vow we'd ever made. She leaned in close, laughing at something he said, and I swear, in that moment, every conspiracy theory in my head became real. It wasn't just an affair, it was a plot, a toxic love operation launched from the inside, and I was the fool who never saw it coming. I stood there, hidden in the shadows by the jukebox, watching them like I was the director of a tragic comedy. And the irony? They looked happy. Happy in a way she hadn't looked with me in years. That hurt more than the act itself. The realization that while I was home worrying about bills, mowing the lawn, planning vacations, she was out here smiling like a teenager at prom. Infidelity doesn't just break trust. It rewrites history. It makes you question every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" that came before. Was it all a lie, or was she always auditioning for another role, waiting for the right co-star? For a second, I wanted to storm over, flip the table, scream about betrayal, revenge, and toxic love. But then I remembered, revenge tastes better when it's cold, calculated, and career-ending. So I pulled out my phone, snapped a few pictures, her hand in his, their drinks clinking, her leaning against his shoulder, evidence. The kind of evidence HR departments salivate over. The kind of evidence that destroys not just marriages, but careers. I walked out before she saw me, adrenaline buzzing in my veins, the weight of betrayal settling heavy in my chest, but fueling something darker, sharper. Because now it wasn't just about family or love or infidelity. It was about payback. And not the sloppy kind, but the kind that leaves scars. She thought she was writing a story where I was the clueless husband, the background character. But she forgot one thing. In every American drama, the betrayed husband eventually flips the script. And that's exactly what I was about to do. There's a very specific kind of silence in American suburbia when you know your spouse is lying to you. It's not the calm, peaceful silence of a Sunday morning with coffee and the paper. No, it's that eerie sitcom silence right before the laugh track, where you can practically hear the universe whisper, "Don't screw this up, buddy." That's the silence I sat in, the night she came home from her client dinner. I was at the table with a beer I wasn't even drinking, the dog curled at my feet like he was waiting for a front row seat to the drama. She breezed through the door at 11:15, heels in her hand, hair a little too perfect, smile a little too fake. "Long night," she said, kissing me on the cheek with lips that reeked of betrayal and lime margaritas. Now, the old me, the gullible, family man, lovesick fool, would have nodded, maybe even asked how the presentation went. But the new me, the husband who had followed her, the husband armed with evidence of infidelity, the husband already drafting revenge in his head, just smiled. A calm, knowing smile. Because nothing scares a cheater more than a spouse who isn't angry, just quiet. Quiet like a storm that hasn't hit yet. "Everything go well at work?" I asked, my voice syrupy sweet, like I was auditioning for a parody of Leave It to Beaver. She blinked, confused for half a second, then snapped back into character. "Yeah, long meeting. We're pushing for a big client. Lots of pressure." She delivered the line with all the confidence of a bad actress in a soap opera, completely unaware that the audience already knew the twist. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to clap. Hell, I wanted to hand her a trophy. Best performance in the category of cheating wife, pretending she wasn't just at a bar with her manager. But instead, I nodded, played the part of the loving, clueless husband. That's what made it delicious. Because inside, my thoughts were anything but loving. Inside, I was screaming. Every word she spoke was another slap, another reminder of the betrayal, the toxic love she tried to pass off as family loyalty. And yet, I stayed calm, because calm is terrifying. Calm means planning. Calm means revenge is coming, and it's going to be nuclear. The next few days were pure theater. She'd kiss me goodbye in the morning, I'd wave from the driveway, and we'd both pretend life was normal. But inside, I was rehearsing lines, writing scenes, directing the whole tragic comedy in my head. She thought I was oblivious, the husband too blind to see the infidelity right in front of him. What she didn't know was that I was already drafting the press release for the end of her career. At dinner one night, I pushed the conversation a little. "So this boss of yours," I said casually, "you two seem pretty close, huh?" She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Then came the laugh, too loud, too forced. "Oh, stop. It's just work. You know how it is." Yeah, I did know how it was. I knew because I had pictures of her hand in his at a sports bar where the only clients were drunk guys singing Bon Jovi at karaoke night. I wanted to slam those photos on the table like a detective in a cop drama, watch her crumble, watch her admit the betrayal. But no, that would have been too easy, too dramatic, too short-lived. Because here's the thing. When infidelity collides with career, the fallout isn't just personal, it's professional. And I realized in that moment that the sweetest revenge wasn't a screaming match in our kitchen. The sweetest revenge was letting her destroy herself. All I had to do was light the match. So I bided my time. I smiled when she lied. I kissed her back when she pretended everything was fine. I even told her I was proud of her hard work, which, in hindsight, might have been the funniest line of all. Every act of affection was another layer of parody, another inside joke between me and myself. Because she thought she was in control, but really she was a puppet, dancing toward the edge of the stage while I held the strings. Late at night, when she was asleep beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and imagine the fallout. HR emails, whispered office gossip, her manager's smug face turning pale when the truth hit. I pictured her packing up her desk, coworkers avoiding eye contact, the humiliation of being exposed not just as unfaithful, but as unprofessional. That was the ultimate betrayal reversed. She'd betrayed the family, but I was going to betray her career. And here's where the conspiracy twist comes in. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like some cosmic test. Like I was being recruited by the universe into a secret society of betrayed husbands whose job was to restore balance. Because in America, when love turns toxic, when family is poisoned by cheating, you don't just walk away. You go to war. Silent, smiling, patient war. So there she was, lying next to me, breathing softly like she wasn't building a house of cards, and there I was, planning the gust of wind to knock it all down. She thought the affair was her little secret. What she didn't know was that I'd already decided her career, her reputation, her shiny corporate image were all about to go up in flames. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I wanted to serve it with a side of corporate policy and a garnish of HR paperwork. Because in America, nothing ruins a person faster than a scandal at work. You can cheat on your spouse and half the neighborhood will shrug, but cheat on your company handbook? That's career suicide. And my wife, in her toxic love affair with her manager, had just volunteered for the gallows. All I had to do was tighten the rope. The first step was evidence. Cold, undeniable, career-ending evidence. I already had the photos, her hand in his, margarita glasses clinking, the kind of pictures you'd expect on an engagement announcement, not from a client dinner. But pictures alone wouldn't be enough. This was corporate America, where everything has to be documented, time-stamped, and filed in triplicate. So I turned into a full-blown private investigator. Forget Magnum PI. This was Suburban Dad PI, complete with cargo shorts and a minivan stakeout kit. I started checking her phone when she forgot it on the counter. Turns out she was about as good at hiding her infidelity as a toddler is at hiding crayons behind their back. Flirty texts from her boss popped up like spam ads. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Hope your husband isn't suspicious. That last one made me laugh so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Suspicious? Buddy, I wasn't suspicious. I was already drafting the HR email that would end both your careers. I took screenshots of everything, organized them into folders by date, labeled them like an accountant balancing betrayal. Text messages, Exhibit A. Hotel receipts, Exhibit B. Because yes, I found the hotel receipts too. She thought using the company card made her slick, like blending cheating with business would cancel it out somehow. But all it did was gift-wrap my revenge. Infidelity plus embezzlement? HR would eat that up faster than free donuts in the break room. And here's where my conspiracy brain kicked in. The more I dug, the more it felt like I was uncovering a corporate espionage thriller. What if this wasn't just an affair? What if they were planning some Bonnie and Clyde hostile takeover, using late-night hookups to plot strategy? What if the real betrayal wasn't just personal, but professional? My mind spun with wild theories, half parody, half paranoia. But the truth was simpler. They were reckless, arrogant, and sloppy. And I was going to use their sloppiness to turn their toxic love story into a cautionary tale for every HR training slideshow from here to eternity. I drafted the letter carefully. Anonymous, professional, laced with just enough righteous fury to get attention, but not so much it looked personal. To whom it may concern, I am writing to inform you of an ongoing violation of company policy involving a manager and his direct report. Attached, you will find documented evidence, including photographs, text message transcripts, and receipts. Given the company's strict anti-fraternization policy, I believe this matter requires immediate investigation. Simple, clean, deadly. Then came the moment of paranoia. What if she found out it was me? What if HR traced the email? What if this whole thing backfired and I ended up the villain? For a brief second, I almost deleted everything, almost convinced myself to take the high road. But then I remembered her hand on his, the margarita glass, the lies, the betrayal of family, the toxic love she'd chosen over loyalty. And just like that, my doubts evaporated. Revenge wasn't just an option. It was justice. I set up a fake email account, the kind hackers and whistleblowers use, and sent the package to HR, CCing the company's CEO for good measure. Because in America, nothing gets people moving faster than the thought of their boss breathing down their neck. I hit send, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. Not happiness. Happiness had been murdered the moment she stepped into that bar. But peace, the calm that comes when you know the wheel of karma is finally spinning in your direction. That night, I sat across from her at dinner, watching her laugh at some sitcom, blissfully unaware that her career had just been detonated from the inside. It was surreal, almost funny. She thought she was running the con, fooling the clueless husband, juggling infidelity and ambition like some toxic love acrobat. But she had no idea I'd flipped the script. I wasn't her audience anymore. I was her executioner. The next morning, she left for work, coffee in hand, heels clicking, same routine as always. But this time, I smiled, because I knew. I knew that somewhere in the HR department, my anonymous email was being read, gasps filling the office, whispers starting to spread. By lunch, there'd be meetings behind closed doors. By evening, her manager's smug face would start to sweat. And within days, the whole tower of lies they'd built would come crashing down. Revenge wasn't about yelling or screaming. It wasn't about flipping tables or crying in public. Revenge was patience. Revenge was letting her believe she'd won, right up until the moment she realized she'd lost everything. Family? Already broken. Love? Already toxic. Career? About to be shredded into confetti and tossed out with yesterday's memos. If karma had a corporate office, it would be HR. And sure enough, 2 days after I hit send on my anonymous email, the first cracks appeared. She came home one evening looking like she'd just run a marathon through a thunderstorm. Her hair was messy, her smile forced, her nerves leaking out of her like a bad faucet. "Rough day at work," she muttered, dropping her bag with the grace of someone who'd just been interrogated under fluorescent lights. Rough day, indeed. Now, I didn't push her. I didn't have to, because nothing exposes betrayal faster than silence. I just nodded, sipped my beer, and said, "Yeah, Mondays, huh?" But inside, I was cackling like a Bond villain, because I knew. HR had opened the file. Somewhere in a glass office, her manager was sweating through his overpriced suit, stammering excuses while a bored HR rep clicked through my attachments, photos, texts, receipts. The evidence didn't just whisper infidelity, it screamed it in PowerPoint format. The whispers began almost immediately. Corporate America runs on gossip the way cars run on gas. If someone sneezes in accounting, the janitor hears about it before lunch. So you can imagine how fast news spread that the Golden Boy manager and his rising star employee were under investigation for policy violations. By Wednesday, the entire office probably knew. By Friday, people were probably betting on whether she'd resign or get fired. She came home midweek with a new excuse, but it wasn't working late. No, this time it was office politics. She sat across from me, twirling spaghetti on her fork like a nervous schoolgirl. "Things are complicated at work right now," she said, eyes darting everywhere but mine. I wanted to burst out laughing. Complicated? That's one word for it. Betrayal plus cheating plus corporate embezzlement equals complicated. But instead, I nodded sympathetically, the supportive husband act still running strong. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the confession. Friday night, she sat on the edge of the bed, tears forming, hands shaking. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. And here it was, the grand performance, the Oscar-worthy act of a cheating wife caught in her own web. I've been seeing someone at work." I didn't even blink, didn't even flinch, just stared, stone cold, letting the silence hang heavy. She searched my face, probably expecting me to explode, to scream about betrayal, family, infidelity. But instead, I leaned back and delivered the line I'd been saving for months. "I know, and so does your company." Her jaw dropped. The color drained from her face like she'd seen a ghost, the ghost of her career, dying right in front of her. She stammered, What do you mean?" I smiled, a calm, deadly smile. "HR, your boss, the emails, the photos, they know everything. You think those margaritas were just happy hour. Try evidence. You think those hotel receipts disappeared? Try Exhibits A through Z." For a second, I thought she might faint. Her entire toxic love story unraveled in real time, every lie detonating at once. She wasn't just a cheating wife anymore. She was a professional liability, a walking HR nightmare. The betrayal that had poisoned our family was now about to poison her career. And I didn't have to lift another finger. The corporate machine was already chewing her up, spitting her out, one memo at a time. Over the next week, the fallout grew. Her manager was placed on administrative leave, which is corporate speak for start cleaning out your desk. She was called into endless meetings where HR asked the same question 17 different ways. Did you violate company policy? Was there a romantic relationship with your manager? Did you use company funds for personal activities? Each time she tried to deny, dodge, deflect. But the evidence was too strong. HR doesn't care about tears, they care about liability. And she was the biggest liability in the building. At home, the tension was delicious. She'd slam doors, cry in the bathroom, whisper on the phone to friends about how unfair it all was. Meanwhile, I'd sit in the living room with the dog, sipping beer, watching football, the very picture of calm. Because here's the thing about revenge. It isn't just about the final blow. It's about savoring the slow unraveling. Every sigh, every panic attack, every rough day at work was music to my ears. And yet, part of me almost pitied her. Almost. Because in America, reputation is currency, and she'd just gone bankrupt. The same coworkers she laughed with now whispered behind her back. The same boss she betrayed our family with now avoided eye contact in the hallway, knowing his career was finished. And the woman who once thought she could juggle love, lies, and ambition now sat at our kitchen table, staring at her cold coffee, realizing everything she'd built was crumbling. But pity doesn't erase betrayal. Infidelity doesn't get a second chance. Family doesn't magically heal from toxic love. And so I sat there, watching her fall apart, knowing the final act was still to come. Divorce papers, reputation in ashes, career in ruins, revenge not just served, but savored. She thought she could control the story. She thought she was the main character, writing her own forbidden romance. But she forgot the oldest rule of American storytelling. The audience loves a twist. And I was the twist she never saw coming. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't end with fireworks. It ends with paperwork. Courtrooms, HR memos, divorce filings that arrive in certified envelopes with sticky notes from your lawyer. And that's exactly where her little toxic love story landed. Not in some grand Hollywood finale, but in a beige office with bad fluorescent lighting, where her boss was officially terminated and she was asked to resign in order to protect the company's reputation, which is corporate language for pack your box, you're done. She came home that day with a cardboard box filled with the sad remains of her career. A couple of framed certificates, a stapler, and a motivational coffee mug that now read like parody, Boss Lady. The look on her face was priceless, half fury, half despair, fully defeated. She dropped the box on the counter and looked at me like I was supposed to comfort her, like I was supposed to hold her and whisper, "It'll be okay." But all I did was raise an eyebrow, sip my coffee, and say, "Long day at the office?" The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Of course, she tried the speeches. Every cheating spouse does. The apologies, the excuses, the desperate justifications. It didn't mean anything. I was under pressure. "I still love you. We're family. We can fix this." Family. The same word she'd trampled under the heels of her infidelity. I listened, arms crossed, nodding like a therapist who'd already written the discharge papers, because by then I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her judge, jury, and executioner, and the verdict was already in: guilty. Filing for divorce wasn't just an act of anger, it was an act of clarity. I wanted it clean, official, stamped with the American seal of "we're done here." People think revenge is about rage, but really it's about control. She had taken control of our marriage, twisted it into some parody of loyalty, rewritten it into a script of betrayal and infidelity. Taking her career away was the first step in taking control back. Divorce was the finale. The cold closure, the community, of course, ate it up like it was the latest Netflix drop. Suburban neighborhoods thrive on gossip. By the time the divorce papers were filed, half the town already knew about her affair, the HR scandal, and her dramatic resignation. The same neighbors who once waved at her in yoga pants now whispered at the mailbox. The moms who invited her to wine nights suddenly got too busy. Even the dog seemed to prefer me, choosing to nap on my side of the bed, tail thumping when I walked in, glaring at her like he knew. Pets always know. Meanwhile, her ex-manager disappeared into the corporate Bermuda Triangle. Fired, disgraced, probably trying to explain the gap on his resume by calling it a sabbatical. She tried reaching out to him once. I could tell by the hushed phone call in the other room. But whatever they had died the moment HR hit print on that investigation report. Their toxic love story didn't end in passion. It ended in panic and block numbers. And me, I felt lighter. Not happy, not exactly. Happiness doesn't return that easily after betrayal. But lighter. Freed from the burden of lies, from the paranoia, from the endless gaslighting that had turned my own home into a conspiracy board. Divorce was my declaration of independence. My revenge wasn't just ending her career, it was reclaiming my life. Of course, people asked me if I regretted it, if I felt guilty about blowing up her career, I just smiled. Because here's the truth. Betrayal is a cancer. It doesn't stop at love. It spreads into everything: trust, family, self-worth. And the only cure is to cut it out completely. She gambled everything on her affair, and she lost. That's not my guilt to carry. That's her legacy. The last time I really saw her, was in the courthouse hallway. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had physically shrunk her. She avoided my eyes, shuffled papers in her hand, tried to look dignified. But dignity doesn't survive infidelity. Dignity doesn't walk out with a cardboard box and a ruined marriage. I signed the final forms, shook my lawyer's hand, and walked out into the sunlight, feeling like I'd just stepped out of a storm. And here's the paradox. Revenge doesn't heal. It doesn't stitch the wound or erase the memory of betrayal, but it does something else. It closes the chapter. It ends the toxic love story with a full stop, not a question mark. And sometimes that's enough. So if you're listening to this, if you're sitting in your kitchen right now, suspicious about your spouse's late nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it's all in your head, let me be clear. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. And if you catch them, don't waste your energy screaming or crying or begging for family values to magically reappear. Do what I did. Take notes. Gather evidence. Play dumb until you're ready. Then flip the script. Because revenge, in its purest form, isn't about getting even. It's about writing the ending. And I wrote mine in bold letters. Divorced. Career ended. Story closed. And if there's one thing I learned through betrayal, cheating, infidelity, and all the toxic love in the world, it's this. Peace doesn't come from forgiveness. Peace comes when you stop playing their game and start directing your own.